طيب biodiversity simply means the number and variety of different species. The number and variety of different species in an area. If we have an ecosystem and there are large numbers and also different types of species, this means that this biodiversity or this ecosystem is diverse. So biodiversity uh, depends, or for to say that something or an ecosystem is diverse, that means there are a lot of species, and must they are different there are different kinds of species, and also there are large numbers of species. طيب, healthy in general, healthy ecosystems also provide the opportunity for different species to interact. يعني in general, healthy ecosystems are uh, diverse ecosystems. طيب, a biodiversity is an indication that the ecosystem is healthy. طيب, okay. Uh, the biodiversity.
احنا هذا الاسم مش اخذناه.
Who's talking? Zaid, this is
بدنا
a revision.
نراجعه.
This is a revision
cool.
for the exam, Zaid.
Oh.
Right. There are two. What is the importance of biodiversity? Biodiversity is very important because it has economic and ecological value. Right. What is the economic value of biodiversity? Because it provides us with services. Simply, economic value, something that we can get from ecosystem. Biodiversity give us economic value, such as providing a household income. Type. Humans use ecosystems. Okay, Munia, do you have any question?
Teacher, can you reshare the screen?
السكرين مش شيرد. ليش ما حكيتوا لي؟
لا ريشير، لأنه أنا عندي معلق.
شو أعمل؟
أنا.
طيب هيك.
لا مش طالع.
لا.
هيك
طلعت؟
Yes.
طيب, can you see all you please? Can you see the screen? Is it okay?
Yes.
طيب.
Yes.
طيب, again, biodiversity has economic and ecological value. What is the meaning of economic value? Humans use ecosystems for our profit. Of course, we use ecosystems to get profit from them. There is value using ecosystems to fulfill our basic needs and wants. The products we take from ecosystems have economic value, طيب, such as providing a household income. طيب. You have to know that the economic value of biodiversity can be direct or indirect. People can profit from healthy ecosystems both directly or indirectly. طيب, what is the difference between direct economic value and indirect economic value? Resources that are consumed from an ecosystem provide a direct value. Anything we get from ecosystems, resources that we consume them, have a direct value. Examples: crops like wheat, grains, other types of grains, cotton. All of these are called the crops. Crops are examples of direct value of biodiversity. طيب. This is an example of a crop like this. Okay, I don't know what type of plants is this, but this is a crop. This woman is growing this crop. She gets a direct value from ecosystems. طيب. Crops are an example of direct value of the biodiversity. Okay. Also, the farmer example, the farmer used the land and grew crops so that she can feed her family and make profit on their sale. This is an example of direct value. In addition to food, also people not gain only food from ecosystems. We can get medicines and raw materials. Raw materials like, for example, raw materials like wood. Wood is a raw material, okay? And they provide resources and income. All of these are economic value and they are direct. Right. Some resources in an ecosystem are used but not consumed. These indirect values also affect economic value. Yani, this is the meaning of indirect value. Some resources that we get from ecosystems are used but not consumed directly, but not consumed. They they are examples of indirect value. Type. For example, shade trees reduce utility bills and provide wind protection. This is an indirect value. We can use trees, for example, for shade. We can use trees to protect us from wind. Also, wetlands reduce soil erosion. We can use trees or plants to reduce soil erosion. This is an indirect value. Hiking is also an indirect value that we get from ecosystems. Touring a unique habitats. This is an indirect value. Right. So ecosystems, biodiversity has an economic value. Also, the economic value can be direct or indirect. What is the ecological value of also ecosystems or biodiversity have ecological value? What is the different, or what is the difference, sorry, what is the difference between economic value and ecological value? طيب. Ecological value, for example, look here. The biodiversity itself is important. Biodiversity is very, very important. Ecosystems are very important. The presence of biodiversity is safe for us, for humans, for people, for Earth, because it protects us from many problems. This is the ecological value of biodiversity. For example, biodiversity sustains ecosystems by protecting land and water resources and aiding in nutrient cycling. Suppose that we don't have biodiversity or we don't have ecosystems. What will happen to the nutrient cycling? For example, water cycle or nitrogen cycle or carbon cycle. All of these cycles will stop or not work. Also, trees and vegetation. Vegetation means the plants in an area. Trees and vegetation hold soil in a place to prevent erosion and landslides. Landslides. This is an ecological value. Also, roots break up rocks and to allow water to enter the soil. Animal waste, as you know, sustains soil fertility. This is an ecological value. So a diverse ecosystem is stable, healthy, productive, and can easily withstand environmental changes. Right. I forget to tell you something about example of important species. A keystone species like this African elephant. Look at this elephant. This is the African elephant. It's called a keystone species by its name. Keystone species is a very important species in the environment or in an ecosystem. The presence of this species is important because other species depend on it. Okay, keystone species is a species that influences or affects the survival of many other species in an ecosystem. Other species that live in the same ecosystem depend on this species for survival because it provides for them or help them to survive. Like an example of keystone species is the African elephant. And as I told you, that a keystone species like the most important player in a football team. For example, some players play an important role in a team, in a football team. Without this player, the team will be affected, and the team may not able to win any match or any game. So the keystone species like the most important player in the team. Right. And the African elephant, for example, feed on the trees and it help other organisms to survive. Okay, African elephant herds appear to be stripping vegetation from the ecosystem, thereby harming it. But actually,
أستاذ بس ندرس على الهايلايت.
yes,
أوكي.
but some park officials wanted to control the elephant population by thinning the hairs. Instead, they let the hairs range freely. When the elephants uprooted the trees, look at the role that the African elephant plays. That made way for grassland and small animals. So the presence of African elephant help grasslands and also smaller animals. Okay, shrubs grew where the trees once stood and fed the animals unable to reach taller trees. Over time, the park ecosystem returned to an ecological balance. So, look, this African elephant helped the ecosystem to recover. Okay, طيب. So biodiversity have economic and economic value and ecological value. Factors that affecting biodiversity. There are many factors that affect biodiversity, like niche diversity, genetic diversity, extinction, and climate and area. All of these factors affect biodiversity. طيب. As you know that every species in an ecosystem occupies a unique niche, and you know that a niche is a role that an organism play in its habitat. The organism's niche means its role in its habitat, or examples of niche or the niche of an organism includes the way it gets the food, what type of food it eats. طيب. The abiotic and biotic factors or resources that a species needs to survive are provided by its niche. These resources include food, water, and habitat. طيب. The niches of different populations within an ecosystem interact with one another. Some species, like the panda, for example, the panda, this animal, has what? This animal, panda, has a narrow niche. What is the meaning of narrow niche? That it depends on a specific type of food. Some species, like the panda in figure 4, live in a narrow niche. Okay, with only a few food sources. This type of animals, the panda, depends only on the bamboo. It eats, did you know that panda eats this type of plants,
Bamboo.
the bamboo? Okay, what happens? Suppose that there is no bamboo. A change happens to an ecosystem, a sudden, for example, a disaster or a fire, and most of the trees or all of the trees of bamboo burned. So this animal or this species
انقرض.
will struggle. Yes, it will starve.
will decline.
Yes, so species that have a narrow niche are more vulnerable to environmental changes. They are not able to tolerate or to stay alive in if there are environmental changes because they have a narrow niche. Of course, species that have a broad niche are able to survive after environmental changes. So this will affect the diversity. Another example of niche diversity that sometimes a niche can be shared by two different species, okay, two different animals or two different organisms or two different species, they share the same niche sometimes. When this happens, they compete for food, of course. They will compete for resources such as food, shelter, or water. And if the resources are very low or limited, one species only can survive, while the other must leave or die out. And this will affect the biodiversity. طيب. Uh, Genetic diversity, that the second factor that affects biodiversity is the genetic diversity. طيب. You may have heard the expression gene pool. There is an expression or a concept called gene pool. What is the gene pool? It is the number of genes available within a population. And I think that you know what are genes. Genes are a code or informations that included that found in your chromosomes in your body. These genes carry your traits. Okay, genes, all organisms, plants, animals, humans, whatever, have genes. These genes are inherited from your parents. For example, your eye color is a trait, your hair
Yes.
color trait. All of these traits, all of these traits are found in your genes, and you inherit these genes from your parents. Genetic diversity is important because genetic diversity, on the other hand, is the total number of inherited traits in the genetic makeup of an entire species. Right. The greater the genetic diversity, the more likely the greater the genetic diversity, the more likely that it is that a species can adapt and survive. يعني species or populations that have a greater genetic diversity are able to survive and adapt to environmental changes. Why, on the other hand, the species with low genetic diversity lack the ability to adapt or to changing environmental conditions. This is everything about genetic diversity. Organisms with high genetic diversity, the greater the genetic diversity, the more likely it is that a species can adapt and survive. And species with low genetic diversity lack the ability to adapt to change environmental conditions. طيب. For example, cheetahs, these organisms have low genetic diversity, so they are subjected or more vulnerable to extinction. Scientists, they may have contributed their near extinction status. They are threatened species. These species have a low genetic diversity. طيب. Species extinction. What is the meaning of extinction? The disappearance of all members of a species from Earth is called extinction. And the most important example of extinctions that happened on Earth is the dinosaurs. Dinosaurs extinct. All members of a species disappear from the Earth. This is called extinction. Okay?
أستاذ آسف بس طلعني بالغلط علقت
Don't worry, don't worry. So when all members of a species disappear from Earth, it is called extinction. طيب. Species in danger of becoming extinct are called endangered species. Okay, some species are in danger of becoming extinct. They are called endangered species. And some species could become endangered. We call them, so some species that could become endangered in the future, in the near future, are threatened species. So there are three types of, you have to distinguish between three things: extinction, or this species is extinct when all members of this species disappear from Earth. Some species may become in danger, some species in danger of becoming extinct are called endangered species, and some species could become endangered. We call them threatened species. طيب. There are two ways in which species can become extinct. Also, extinction can be, there are two types of, or two ways of extinction. There is a background extinction, which occurs over a long period of time, and it usually involves only one species. Background extinction happens over a long period of time and involves only one species. This type of extinction is caused by environmental changes or the arrival of a competitor cause. Okay, a competitor, or like invasive species, sorry. So environmental changes or the arrival of competitor like invasive species cause a background extinction. So background extinction happens over a long period of time. It involves one species and it is caused by environmental changes. Now, the second type of extinction is called mass extinction. What is the difference between background and mass extinction? Mass extinction kill many different species, while the background extinction just for one species. And the second difference, that mass extinction happens in a very short time. Mass extinctions are caused by rapid climate changes. For example, meteoroid, continuous volcanic eruptions, or changes in air or water. All of these are factors of mass extinction. So, mass, of course, extinction affect biodiversity. Right. This is the thing about extinctions. There are also other factors that may affect biodiversity, like climate and size of an ecosystem. They affect the type. Of course, if the climate is good, if the temperatures are, if the temperatures are good, if there is a good amount of rainfall, so the climate is good and species will thrive. The biodiversity, it is very good, or it is a positive factor for biodiversity. طيب. For example, the rainforest, it is the most diverse, one of the most diverse places on Earth is the tropical rainforest, because the climate there is very good. Temperatures do not fluctuate greatly, and you can say that temperatures in the rainforest ecosystem is stable. They do not fluctuate greatly, and it receives a large amount of rainfall. These two factors are very important in ecosystem. And plants grow all over the year round, providing food for animals. طيب. The second, or another important factor in that affect biodiversity is the area. Of course, ecosystems, or area means the amount of space that an ecosystem covers, also determines biodiversity. Yani if there is a large amount of space, so organisms or species will find shelter. Okay, they will not compete for space. Example, look at this example to understand how the area affect, or the size of ecosystem affect the biodiversity. more species are found in an ecosystem that covers 50 square kilometers than in one that covers 10 square kilometers. Of course, this ecosystem that have more space or more area, 50 square kilometers, will provide, we can find more species in it than at the other ecosystem that has a smaller area, 10 square kilometers. Right. So an ecosystem with a large area will generally have more biodiversity. Human impact is one of the most important factors that affect the biodiversity. And in general, as you know, humans harm the environment. Most of the human activities or human impact is bad for the environment. We can help the environment and also we can harm the environment, but unfortunately, humans in general harm the environment. When an ecosystem is harmed in any way, it is of course the biodiversity is reduced. Human activities in general directly impact ecosystems and the organisms that live there. طيب. This figure, يعني, as you see, some human activities or some human impacts can be good, like this, when you try to help organisms. But this, for example, when we clear forest or cut down trees, this is bad for the environment. Okay? For example, human impact can damage the biodiversity. Human activities can cause most of the harm to habitats. Human activities cause most of the harm to habitats and ecosystems. The result is a loss of its biodiversity. طيب, example of human activities that impact or harm the environment: removing natural resources from an ecosystem can reduce its biodiversity. Also, increased levels of carbon dioxide gas, increased levels of carbon dioxide gas contribute to climate change. And as you know, burning fossil fuels is one of the most important factors that increased the levels of carbon dioxide. One way humans contribute to climate change is by removal of resources, also removal of resources from ecosystems. People remove trees, as you know, for farming, houses, and timber. The removal of trees will increase the amount of carbon dioxide in the climate, in the atmosphere, because trees can trees can make photosynthesis. When you cut the trees, so there will be a little amount or less amount of trees that can make photosynthesis, and this process, as you know, in photosynthesis, trees and plants take in carbon dioxide, which reduce the amount of carbon dioxide. So removing trees will increase the levels of carbon dioxide. طيب. The use of machinery to remove and process the trees increases the amount of carbon dioxide gas in the atmosphere. In addition, the deforested plants are not taking in carbon dioxide. طيب. Also, humans can impact or harm the environment by producing non-native species. They are called invasive species. Human activities can also introduce a stranger species, we call them invasive species, into a habitat. And these invasive species are dangerous because often invasive species out compete with native species within an ecosystem, and humans also remove species when poachers illegally kill wildlife for clothing, medicine, or body parts such as horns for ivory. Many people in Africa kill or hunt elephants for their horns, like ivory, and this reduces the numbers of elephants in these areas. Okay, so people can harm the environment by cutting the trees, introducing invasive species. Okay, also humans can help the environment. We can protect biodiversity by practicing, for example, preservation. Okay, we can all take action. شو عندكم بعد هاي الحصة؟
English.
English.
طيب اوكي، ضايل عندنا 2 minutes هسه بنطلع. We can all take action to protect wildlife on earth. Me and you can take action to protect wildlife. For example, look at this figure. Here we can help, sorry, this figure. This is an example of how can we help the environment. طيب. For example, students should collecting data for conservation projects. طيب. Also, we can preserve habitats like making national parks, marine fisheries, and wildlife refuges. All of these are examples of how can we protect the environment. Also, the cooperation can be global. Many countries and organizations cooperate to protect the environment. Right. This is everything about lesson 3. Okay. Unfortunately, we don't have enough time to memorize the last lesson. طيب, that's enough for today. Thank you for listening. Do you have any comments?
No.
طيب, don't worry about the exam, inshallah. It will be easy. But please study hard.
Easy.
Study hard.
يعني نفس الأسئلة.
أستاذ شو نمط الأسئلة؟
As in the first exam, there are multiple choice questions. There are true false questions.
أستاذ كثار.
But also,
أسئلة.
is there also some questions?
أستاذ بس الإنجليزي بعثت الرابط.
Okay, يلا خلاص, you can leave. Don't worry about the questions. Don't worry.
Okay, bye.
Right, goodbye.